In this video, we're going to go through and talk about debugging apps. Now, Eclipse has got solid debugging capabilities built into it, and it's going to be something that you will definitely be wanting to use. Learning how to debug certainly will dramatically reduce the time it takes to find bugs and to get your program up and going again. So let's go through now. I'll go into Eclipse and take a preliminary look at how debugging works. Okay, so here we are in the developer folder. First things first, I'm going to delete the image we created in the previous video when we're going through and doing the DDMS perspective. So I'm going to delete that. Okay, next, you know the drill. Android Developer Tools, Eclipse subfolder, Start Eclipse. And click OK. Now once that fires up, I'm going to expand, click on My First App in the top left hand corner and expand that out. And I'm going to go into the source folder. I'm going to delete the example My First class that I created previously because we no longer need that. So I'm going to delete that. Then I'm going to go back to the main activity. What's actually in there now in front of it, but if it wasn't there I could just double click it like so and that would bring it up. And I'm going to delete that error that's coming up as an error now because I've deleted the class. Okay, so I'm going to save that off now. Okay, so what we want to talk about now is some debugging. So how do we debug an application? How do we try and get it to stop at a certain point or find out what the state of variables are at a particular point in time? That's what this video is all about. So first things first, generally the best way to debug is to go into the debug perspective. There's one especially created for that very purpose. So what I'm going to do first is go over here to the Java perspective and we're going to close that because we no longer need that. Then I'm going to go up to Window, Open Perspective and choose Debug. Now you can see that's a special perspective that really is aimed to make debugging a lot easier for you. It's giving you a lot of the information that you would normally need when you're debugging. So I'm going to go down here, go into the main activity.java class, which I had already clicked on the previous screen. I'm going to click over here, go into the onCreate method. Now this is the method that is called automatically when the application starts. And I'm going to go to the left here where it's got Set Content View. I'm going to double click to the left of that. Now you can see what's happened is there's a little line that's been added in there and that's called a breakpoint. So what we've done is we've said that to the program when it's running we want you to get up to this line but then to stop. So when you put whatever line you select, that line will not be executed. Everything up until that line will be executed. So in other words, this is the line in the code that draws the content layer that says Tim was here, what used to be hello world. We've told the program to stop before it gets that line. And just to confirm, if we go up over here into breakpoints, you can see there's a main activity now. There's line 14 and that equates to line 14 over here. So we know that we've got our breakpoint. So once you've done that, the next step is to click on the debug, little debugger, the little picture of a bug. We're going to run it on our Android virtual device. So I'm going to select that and click OK. Now once it's started, you can see we've got a few things that have come up here and there's a suspended breakpoint. But first things first, let's go over to our emulator window. And we can see that our app is running. It's got the first heading, but it hasn't got the second line. So you can see that it hasn't executed that line that displays that message at that point. And that's what this, going back to the Java code, that's what this line is meant to do. So that's a very quick way to determine or to break, which is going to be very useful in later projects, particularly when your projects get larger. You might want to put several breakpoints in so that you can actually test the state of variables and so on. Now, for example, looking over here now, you can see this is a list of variables. Now all the variables you have in your particular class will be shown. Now in this particular case, in this method, we haven't got any variables, so none are showing up. But the actual class variables, there are going to be quite a few. Now these aren't just your own variables, they're also the variables from the system itself. From the system itself, so it's quite handy from that point of view. So very simple way of debugging, which is good. But look, there's other things you can do as well. I'm going to get into Logcat and show that in a minute. But over here on the console, we've got a list of messages. But also here, something that I find quite useful is tasks. We haven't talked about that before, but you can right click that at any time, add a task, like fix fix bug. And that will appear in there. But the other thing you can do, if you do find an error on a line, let's just assume that line was the error, you can right click on that line and click on add task. And you can see how it's filled this out automatically. It's put the description in, it's actually automatically copied that entire line's code and it's put it all in there and it's put the location and everything for us. We might say that that's a high priority. And we could put something like, you know, crashing with error 5, for example. We've now got an error here and we've indicated that's a high priority, and we can go there later and click it. And as we scroll over here, you can see that it stores the line number, the path, the activity and so forth. And you can come along here later, and what you can do is you can right click this at any time and click on mark completed, and it puts a tick in there automatically for you. That's a good little way of tracking sort of any errors that you've got in your program. And this area here is for other errors that come up automatically. Now we can simulate that, but not right at the moment because we're in the middle of a debug. But essentially, it's going to show you a similar bit of information to what that did when we created that task. So it's a good way, again, going in there. If you've got 5 problems, there are 5 things that need to be fixed before the program runs properly. Executables is really more for importing, which we're not going to be talking about right now. So they're the main sort of areas that to get into with debugging. Logcat we're going to do in the next video. We're going to go through and show you an example of how you can write some data from your program to the Logcat to understand how that works a little bit better. So we'll get into that in the next video. But before I go, the other thing I want to talk about is continuing. So obviously we've got to this line and it hasn't been executed yet. So if we go back again to our emulator, it's still waiting to execute. So you might want to do this automatically. You'll be checking the state of various variables and so forth. But once you're happy for it to proceed, over here there's this button, and it may be in a different position on your toolbar, but there's a resume button. You click on that, and that resumes where it was halted, and it goes through and it'll either execute to the end of the program or to the next breakpoint. In this case, because we've only got the one breakpoint, it should effectively have executed that code now. So if we go back and have a look, we can now see Tim was here. So that's a very base tour of debugging. We'll be seeing the debugger in action more as we go throughout the program, but that gives you a little bit of an overview of it anyway.